In recent days, international headlines have been dominated by reports related to the capture of Nicolas Maduro. The news triggered diplomatic tensions, legal debates, and global reactions. But there is a deeper question that very few are asking honestly. Are we witnessing the fall of one man, or the collapse of a system that destroyed one of the richest countries in Latin America? To understand what is happening now, we must first understand how Venezuela got here. Not emotionally, not ideologically, but economically. Venezuela did not collapse because of bad luck. It did not collapse because of capitalism. It did not collapse because of a lack of natural resources. Venezuela collapsed because of a political and economic model built on state control, hostility toward markets, destruction of private property, and the systematic elimination of incentives that make economies function. And this story did not begin with Maduro. It began with Hugo Chavez. Chavez rose to power during a period of historically high oil prices. Venezuela was flooded with dollars. The country had a unique opportunity to diversify its economy, strengthen institutions, attract investment, and prepare for the future. Instead, Chavez chose a different path: price controls, currency controls, mass expropriations, exploding public spending, and open hostility toward entrepreneurs and private capital. The state became the center of everything, and when the state controls everything, corruption becomes structural. Here is a truth many refuse to admit. Socialism does not fail because of lack of money. It fails because it destroys incentives. When producers cannot set prices, they stop producing. When investors have no legal certainty, they stop investing. When political loyalty replaces merit, efficiency disappears. The result is always the same: shortages, inflation, and widespread poverty. Over time, private companies disappeared or were absorbed by the state. Agriculture collapsed, industry shut down. The black market became the real economy. The national currency lost credibility. Inflation stopped being an economic issue and became a humanitarian disaster. Money stopped functioning as money. When Maduro took power, he did not correct these mistakes. He doubled down on them. With no real leadership, deeply questioned legitimacy, and sustained mainly by the military and institutional control, Maduro turned Venezuela into an increasingly authoritarian, closed, and economically dysfunctional state. The anti-imperialist rhetoric grew louder as the economy collapsed faster. Every internal failure was blamed on an external enemy. And here lies one of the greatest economic paradoxes of modern history. Venezuela has one of the largest oil reserves on the planet. This should have guaranteed prosperity. Instead, oil became a curse. The oil industry was fully politicized through the state company PDVSA, which was transformed into a tool of political power, patronage, and regime financing. Without technical management, without private investment, and without competition, production collapsed. Infrastructure deteriorated. Skilled professionals fled the country. Corruption became systemic. Venezuela went from being an energy powerhouse to a marginal oil producer, even during periods of high global oil prices. This is a critical lesson. Natural resources do not make countries rich. Institutions do. When resource wealth is used to sustain political power instead of economic development, the result is destruction. Oil was used to buy political support, not to build a future. Now let us move to the present. The recent reports surrounding Maduro's capture, still surrounded by legal disputes and conflicting narratives, represent a geopolitical earthquake. Because Venezuela is no longer just an internal crisis, it became a regional destabilizer and a direct strategic concern for the United States. And here, we must be honest. The United States does not act out of charity. It acts out of national interest. Venezuela became a risk for several fundamental reasons. First, mass migration. Millions of Venezuelans fled the country, placing pressure on borders, labor markets, and social systems throughout Latin America, with direct and indirect consequences for U.S. domestic politics and border security. Second, transnational crime. Institutional collapse created space for criminal organizations involved in drug trafficking, weapons, and human trafficking. When the state disappears, organized crime fills the vacuum. Third, geopolitical alignment. Venezuela increasingly aligned itself with adversarial powers, using energy, territory, and regional influence as political leverage against Western interests. Fourth, and most serious, persistent accusations that the Venezuelan state itself became entangled with illicit networks, blurring the line between government and organized crime. When that happens, the issue is no longer ideology. It becomes national security. From Washington's perspective, Venezuela stopped being just a failed socialist experiment. It became a strategic liability. This is why the possible fall of Maduro matters. But here is where many people get it wrong. Removing a leader does not automatically remove the system. If Chavismo survives without Maduro, Venezuela will collapse again. From my perspective, real reconstruction is only possible through a complete break with the socialist model. Venezuela needs hard, unpopular, but realistic decisions. First, immediate legal certainty. Without respect for private property and contracts, there is no investment. Without investment, there is no recovery. Second, real economic liberalization. The elimination of price and currency controls with a responsible transition, but without populist illusions. Third, fiscal and monetary discipline. No country prospers by financing the state through inflation. Inflation is the most brutal tax because it destroys the poorest first. Fourth, privatization and depoliticization of state-owned enterprises. Companies must generate value, not votes. Fifth, full opening of the oil sector to private capital, competition, and technology under clear and transparent rules. Oil can be part of the solution, but only if it stops being a political weapon. Sixth, serious anti-corruption enforcement, asset recovery, and institutional rebuilding. And seventh, reintegration into the global system, debt renegotiation, and restoration of international credibility. None of this will be easy. None of this will be fast. But there is no alternative. Venezuela does not need a new savior. It needs institutions strong enough that no savior is ever needed again. And here is the final reflection. Venezuela's story is not just Venezuela's story. It is a warning to every country flirting with economic populism. Every time a government promises to protect the people by destroying the market, the result is scarcity. Every time the state tries to replace private initiative, the result is poverty. Every time ideology ignores economic reality, reality sends the bill. The possible fall of Maduro is not the end of Venezuela's crisis, but it could mark the beginning of the end of one of the most destructive political illusions in modern history. Venezuela's future depends on one decision: economic freedom or permanent collapse. History has already shown which one works. Now I want to hear from you. Can Venezuela rebuild by abandoning socialism? Or will the system survive even without Maduro? Leave your comment below. Because understanding economics is not about ideology. It is about reality.